Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I am Surya Gangadharan. Shanghai is among those cities in China where there's been relatively little effect of the coronavirus. And I have with me Amit Waikar. He is an Indian national based in Shanghai for the last decade. And he works for a multinational there. He's been very active on the Indian circuit too. And we thought this would be a good time to talk to him about the situation in Shanghai and broadly about the situation in China also in general. Mr. Waikar, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Suryaji, and it's a pleasure for me to connect with you.
Mr. Waikar, can you first tell us what is the situation in Shanghai in particular? And I also like to look at Wuhan. Do you have any information about the situation there? Is it improving? Is it getting better?
So, two very important questions. Quick updates from here. On the 17th of January, China finally declared a nationwide shutdown, and we probably can come to the word finally because I personally feel that they had delayed this. They should have done this at least a few weeks earlier, but all that is history now. And it was actually on the 13th of March that China came out and said that look, we are not seeing a spread of this coronavirus anymore, and we've been able to kind of put a hold to that. So they're not seeing a growth in that now. So clearly, as you can see, for the last 2 months, so to speak, we have been living here in the new normal. And I can be very sure that a lot of my friends back home in India and in many other parts of the world would also like to do that as well.
Yeah, you bet.
Situation in Wuhan is absolutely, let's say, again in the new normal. There are, but let's when I say new normal, it's not that there are zero cases. There are one or two cases which keep coming up even now in Wuhan, in Shanghai, in Beijing, in Guangzhou. But there is an effective mechanism to deal with that. And therefore, the Chinese government is so sure of its 2 months lockdown and the implications and the results of that that you would be amazed to know that Chinese government has gone on the offensive in in conceptualizing and spreading a very interesting way to get people out of their homes. It's called revenge tourism. The word is very interesting. So they're actually promoting people to go out on the weekends on favorite picnic spots and hot destination within the country, of course, and then proudly put out banners to say, "We love our country. Hey, we have achieved victory." Basically, the whole idea is to spur up consumer spending.
Yeah. So they are very confident that they've got the better of the virus. There's no second wave, as some of the reports we read speak of.
There is definitely a fear and a concern here about the second wave. The reason why they are confident now is it's a very simple analogy that I can give. They have taken great efforts to clean their home, right? It is like what when we were growing up, our mothers used to take huge amount of efforts in the morning to really clean up the home. And they have done that to a lot of pain, and we have to give them credit for that. And they're also not allowing any foreign nationals to come back. If that's the case, then of course the people here who are living here, they are absolutely being told to to mingle, to go out, to visit restaurants, to travel. Um, the reason I say there is a concern is because if that the concern was not there, China would probably have been a little bit more relaxed in allowing my own fellow countrymen who are stuck in India and many other countries who are stuck there to come back. And they're not allowing that so far. So there is definitely a fear of the second wave.
But domestic flights are on.
Domestic flights are on. Pretty much similar situation as we see in India. There is a fair bit of, and that was expected. The flights are no more as full as they used to be. Otherwise, there used to be 18 flights a day from here to Beijing, similar to Mumbai and Delhi. And to get a seat on that flight used to be a challenge earlier, but no more. I mean, there are seats are in plenty.
Now let's take a look at how the Indians are. There was a huge evacuation of them. I
Yes.
understand from our earlier conversation some time ago that there are still many Indians in Shanghai and other places, even in Wuhan.
That's true. You would be, I mean, it might be an interesting fact for you and for our viewers that there are around 70 to 80,000 Indians in China. I'm talking the pre-COVID
Yeah.
numbers. Now that's not a big number, isn't it? When you look at US or Europe, but then China has not been the hot destinations for Indians to come and live and reside anyway.
True.
So for us, 70 or to 80,000 is not a bad number. Shanghai alone has around 4,000. And then there are some interesting cities like Yiwu, Shaoxing, Kachao, which people don't hear back home so much. And these are the trading posts, so to speak. ये वो जगह है जहाँ पे where we get our deepamalais and our akash diyas for the Diwali, which and of course this is done by our fellow Indians as much as it's done by the local Chinese. A large number of people, as you rightly said, did move back to India and to other countries. Let's say in the end of Jan and beginning of Feb. So my guess, and it's only a guess estimate, I believe that we are now 50% of what the initial numbers was, and 50% is still stuck outside.
And is there any problem if they wish to return at some point? Would the Chinese, would their visas be valid? Would their work permits be valid?
So what China has done is pretty similar to what other countries had done, and I believe India had also done that. For the time being, all your existing visas, in case you are out of the country, stand, let's say, suspended.
Okay.
Visas and work permits. What they have also told people here is that they will take up these cases pretty much on a case-to-case basis once they allow foreign nationals to come back. The only heartening side for me is that I was told that last week from Germany, they have allowed one flight of, let's say, people, professionals, not without their families, of course, but people who are able to prove that there is a reason for them to come back to China. So I'm hoping that very soon they would do a similar thing, at least for our professionals who really need to come back here and work.
So these are mostly employed in IT or spread across industries?
You're quite right to say that IT is definitely a mainstay for professionals, but there are also quite a few other interesting sectors which might be interesting for you and for our viewers and our friends back home. Pharmaceutical industries in China do employ quite a bit of Indians, so that's always is a big ray of hope for me, because now we're looking at pharma, let's say pulling up some of these pharma companies, inviting them over to India. That's a big number. The biggest number still, in my opinion, are the traders, the businessmen. That is still a very large number of people who run their own businesses. And there, of course, also most of them are stuck back in India.
Now I come to the big question, the Chinese economy. There are reports from China that the economy is on the uptick. Some industries have reopened, factories are running again, people are getting employed. What do you read? What do you see?
There are two sides to it. You're absolutely right. The Chinese economy had tanked in the month of Jan and in the month of Feb. Now, what we need to understand is that January was the month of the Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
So therefore, in the month of Jan, it was expected that the economy will come to a halt, because that's what happens in the Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
It's the biggest festival they have, and therefore all factories are shut, nobody's producing, and typically this goes on for 3 to 4 weeks. Now, of course, what happens is after the Chinese New Year, the factories do restart with a bang, and that didn't happen. So February was also a washout, so to speak. But after that, what we are seeing, for example, in some of these industries, as you rightly mentioned, I work for the food and beverage industry. There we are seeing such a huge growth. And a lot of that growth predominantly is being driven through e-commerce, through the O2O platform. Because here, unlike many other countries, the use of smartphones and the use of apps such as WeChat, which you probably now everybody in India also knows, or most people know that, and Alipay was always in use for making online purchases. But what happened is that suddenly this went to a second, completely different level, because people were stuck home, and China was still being able to manage deliveries through these people. What is interesting to note is that a lot of new innovation and new innovative products are coming out in the market. Let me first speak on food and beverages. Immunity, health enhancement, meal replacements, these are becoming trends. So One of the things that I'm doing in a lot of webinars that I am conducting for friends and fellow countrymen back home in India, I always keep giving this message of positivity that when we restart, we will also see some of these sectors really coming up with a bang. The dampener for all this is the exports. Exports has not picked up, and rightfully so, because look, there are very few countries who can order right now, right? And exports does constitute a large portion of China's economy. So that has not yet picked up. In-home consumption is up, exports is still down.
And what about Indian firms? What are the prospects for Indian firms or even those exporting from India to China? There are barriers, I understand, even now.
Well, I think we need to look at this from a different perspective. That if you look at Indian companies who are working in China or who have been successful in China, I must say and regretfully say that there are anyway far and few. There are very few companies, Indian companies, who have been able to make a dent in China. Even the IT companies here,
Yeah.
and they are of course quite a few of them, and they employ a large number of people. But I don't believe that they are making a huge profit or they're really that business model is super strong. So I think this was definitely something which was not really a big push and a big segment. So in that way, any shift in that number doesn't make a difference yet because anyway, that's not too much.
Yeah.
But you're right. In future, that should be a focus for us also. The let's say the spread of Indian companies in China.
In the current environment where there is, shall we say, a certain dissonance in the relationship, there are certain hiccups in the relationship. How do you see the economic thing going forward? Do you believe that China, as a global part of the supply chain, will slowly come up again, and those old ties will be restored? Do you see some? What do you see? What is that you read?
I think one aspect of I mean, I've been here for 10 years now. I personally sometimes wonder, well, wow, 10 years has been a long time. An interesting thing about China has come out to me, and I'm sure when you think about it, you will completely agree. China's largest economic friends are their largest political enemies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we just look at this paradigm shift between our country and China,
Yeah.
China, its focus is on business and business alone.
Yeah.
And if we can also somewhere start to kind of get into that mindset with them, we will surely realize that. And I'm not trying to say that the differences are. I'm not trying to make them minimize them. But if there's one thing that we can pick up from China, that is that you can still live with your differences. You can still very much keep them alive, but still ensure that there is economic prosperity for both. So my
Which I think
hope
is
is
what we
that
are trying
in the
to do.
new. Hmm?
Which, when you look at it, is what we are trying to do.
Exactly. Exactly. I
Some.
was just going to come to that. That in the new normal, in the post-COVID world, with this ever-shifting geopolitical status, I actually do see that happening, and that would be a positive thing for both countries. A deepening economic engagement.
Last question. Um, is there anything you read in the local media about the issues we've been having on the boundary here? Any reports, any opinions that are being put out? Anything at all?
That's a very interesting question. No, I don't. And you'd be one interesting fact. My father, late Dr. Vinay Waikar, was in the army. He was a doctor with the Army Medical Corps, and so a very proud Fauji, as you can imagine. When I moved here, he was very keen to come here, and you can understand the obvious reasons for that. And equally, he was very surprised, and I purposefully took him and I introduced him to probably 50 or 55 people in the vicinity, Chinese, from different age groups. And not even one person, and I told him, Baba, I have not bribed them, I have not told them to talk. Nobody remembered the conflict of the bygone era
Yeah.
here in China.
Yeah.
And he was surprised because he had his preconceived notions when he before he came here, and he
Yeah.
was pleasantly surprised. to see that.
Yeah, yeah, it's something I've noticed too in China on my visits there. I mean, the general population has no idea at all, that even a conflict even happened.
That's true.
Yeah. So, last question, Amit.
Mhm.
Looking back at what all we've gone through,
Mhm.
and looking ahead, would you like to speculate on the scenario, say, in the next couple of months, whether it's economic or political? What's your sense?
I think I would, I mean, we all need to, isn't it? We need to focus on the economic scenario because, finally it is all about life and livelihood.
Yeah.
I mean, and this really makes, because when I see and I read, and I'm very closely connected with at least my state of Maharashtra, with my city of Nagpur, with Mumbai. I think economic, let's say, recovery is of paramount importance. My 2 cents on this whole is that e-commerce will actually be a vehicle to take us forward much more strongly than what we expect or what we anticipated. Because look, let's agree that till now e-commerce was for many a buzzword.
Yeah.
Even for my mother, who is a doctor in Nagpur, 70 plus, the whole concept was, नहीं ये मेरे बस की बात नहीं, ये सब फोन वोन पे शॉपिंग करना मेरे बस की बात नहीं. But there is this lady, the same lady is now saying, I better start using that, and she's actually now getting hooked up to it. The
Okay.
fact that I just read a data that more than 60% users of, let's say, smartphones in India are actually using the smartphones to digitally buy goods and make payments. We have to leverage that. That is one aspect. And then the second aspect, which I think we should all be very proud of, and we should really be focusing that, is our agriculture sector. With all the industries getting such a beating in the last 2 or 3 months, if there's one sector that has really held on to its promise, it's our agriculture sector. So if we start building ecosystems like what I see in China, these clusters where we have agro-based industries coming around our big agriculture producing regions, that is another amazing opportunity for us. So I am very, very, let's say, very positive, very optimistic that we will definitely see a rebound, an economic recovery, much stronger than what we all anticipate.
Well, on that note, Amit Waikar, pleasure talking to you and listening to your views. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and have a nice day, and Jai Hind.